It started over the Pacific. Not a thunderclap, nor a blinding light, just a ripple in cloud formations, as if the atmosphere had exhaled something heavy and strange. Minutes later, 23 objects entered the stratosphere at inconsistent speeds, some drifting like dandelion seeds, others piercing through jet streams with the grace of falling daggers. The pods, if one could call them that, weren't built from metal. They throbbed faintly, like hearts. One hovered for hours above the International Spaceport in northern Australia before unfurling in a spiral pattern, revealing its passenger. She stood over 7 feet tall, skin muted blue with faint opal fractals across her arms. Hair? Maybe. It looked more like feathered bone. Around her waist grew a belt of fibrous tendrils that adjusted their color depending on who looked directly at them. She didn't speak, not vocally. Instead, the air around her shimmered with a whispering distortion. That's how the linguists described it, like syntax encoded in atmosphere. Where is the origin male? That was the first phrase the translation matrices managed to extract. Earth governments scrambled to respond. The United Dialogue Authority, a newly formed cooperative between orbital colonies and post-national governments, issued an open contact protocol. By the third day, 8 more of the Drelvan women had landed. Each came from a different subculture of their world, clad in living armor, trailing spores or accompanied by biosymbiotic creatures the size of house cats. And all asked the same question. The public assumed it was a joke. Holofeeds dubbed the event the reverse invasion. Memes flooded the net, half romance fantasy, half horror. They came for our men, trended for 36 hours. But beneath the sarcasm, unease crept in. These beings weren't just visitors. They were selecting something. One of them, taller than the others and marked with hexagonal scars on her temples, broadcast her thoughts publicly through a frequency usually reserved for weather monitoring. Her message was translated by an exhausted AI linguist who hadn't slept in 2 days. The line must continue. The sequence must unlock. One of your men contains the dormant pattern. We offer knowledge, energy, sustenance. We request him in return. Not one of your men. The man. Ryan Hale worked on Maintenance Deck B of the Mir 7 orbital platform, a place built to look after low-orbit satellites and relay hubs. Quiet, clean, and full of spare parts no one knew how to categorize. Ryan liked it that way. He had a good relationship with silence. He didn't notice the shift in crew behavior until the station's environmental AI piped up, unusually chatty. Mr. Hale, there's a query from Earth-based channels. Multiple flags on your genome profile. Shall I restrict access? What kind of flags? You match a sequence recently indexed by alien diplomatic archives. Cross-species compatibility matrix suggests rare resonance, estimated probability, 0.0000000147%. He blinked. Resonance with what? Reproductive ancestry encoding, Drelvan class female, Queen lineage gamma. The visitors have requested a meeting. Ryan stared at the ceiling. You're joking. I don't possess that function. The next 2 hours were a blur. His face was scanned, blood reanalyzed, even his childhood dental records pulled. He was flown back to Earth by emergency capsule before he could finish packing his toolkit. The last thing he saw from orbit was the trail of more Drelvan pods entering the troposphere, 12, 15, then 19. They were converging, not on cities, not on governments, on him. He was taken to a neutral site, a converted glacial observatory in Iceland, where the Drelvans had established a temporary harmonic zone. The building had changed. Organic vines traced the walls, glowing gently with respiration. Furniture molded itself around the contours of bodies. The air smelled like rain and burnt plastic, oddly nostalgic. One by one, the Drelvan envoys entered the chamber. Each regarded Ryan in silence, studying not his face, but his presence, like he was a puzzle they'd waited centuries to touch. None reached for him, no sudden gestures, just observation, like archivists before a sacred relic. Then one of them, slighter than the rest, with geometric lashes and a voice like distant strings, spoke aloud for the first time. "Your breath carries the pattern." Ryan backed away instinctively. "I don't even know what that means." Another stepped forward. "You are the seed vector. It is not about knowledge. It is about what lies inside your spiral." They did not smile. They did not flirt. They did not plead. They simply stared, a group of beings thousands of years older than anything Earth had ever hosted, all poised for one purpose. And Ryan, still dressed in a gray orbital jumpsuit stained with coolant, exhaled quietly and asked, "What happens if I say no?" No one answered. Instead, one of the walls began to unfurl. The contest had begun. The chamber changed shape each morning, not through machinery or construction crews, but through slow, blooming growth. What had been a laboratory the previous night was now a quiet amphitheater, its walls formed from calcified plant stuff, translucent and humming faintly with temperature-sensitive color. Ryan sat cross-legged on a wide circular platform that resembled an unfurled mushroom cap. He had been there for hours, staring at the 9 Drelvan envoys now positioned evenly in a crescent around him. None of them blinked, at least not in the way humans did. An attendant, half mollusk, half machine, clicked forward and poured a glass of blue liquid for him. He didn't drink it. The translator, a brassy box embedded into a strip of soft material around Ryan's neck, processed layers of atmospheric pheromones and low-frequency sounds into clipped monotone English. "Today begins Resonance Conflict Phase 1. The 9 have agreed to abide by the conditions of silent engagement. Physical alteration of the seed vector is prohibited. Influence may be applied through projection, scent wave, visual argument, or minor auditory distress." "I'm sorry," Ryan said aloud. "Did you just say minor auditory distress?" The translator didn't respond. Instead, the first envoy stepped forward. Her body shimmered, not with light, but with motion beneath her skin, like liquid diagrams shifting across a canvas. Her hair writhed independently of gravity. She knelt, spreading her long fingers wide on the floor, and said nothing. Behind her, a tall envoy with cracked carapace lines along her shoulders emitted a high-pitched whistle. The translator struggled. Her submission lacks logic. She mimics extinct courtship modes. Outdated, desperate. The kneeling envoy did not react. Instead, she released a pulse of pheromones so thick the human guards outside the dome staggered. Ryan covered his mouth with the sleeve of his jumpsuit. He wasn't aroused. He was overwhelmed. Another envoy, clad in bands of what resembled living moss, took a different approach. She floated. Not with tech, but through internal manipulation of mass ratios, something her people had evolved to do in high-gravity zones. While hovering, she projected an image directly into Ryan's optic nerves. He blinked and suddenly saw himself, older, standing on a plain of rust-colored grass beside something, not quite a child, not quite alien either. It laughed with 2 voices. "Stop," he muttered. "That's not real." The projection faded. "It is not fiction," her voice translated softly, almost apologetic. "It is a viable simulation. One version of your life, if you choose." Ryan stood abruptly. "I didn't ask for choices. I didn't ask for any of this." The envoys remained still, like sculptures listening to a storm. Then the youngest among them moved. She was quiet, less ornate than the others, bearing no adornments. Her approach was simple. She brought something. A cube of hardened resin. She placed it before Ryan and pressed her hand to the surface. The block opened, revealing a piece of paper, actual paper, printed in faded ink. English. Ryan picked it up. It was a copy of his college thesis from a forgotten academic server on Earth. He looked at her. "How did you even get this?" Her only response was a line of pheromonal code the translator struggled with for 30 seconds before producing, "Because you are not only your biology. We remember minds, not just bodies." It struck him then. Not all the envoys saw him the same way. Some viewed him as a gate, others a blueprint. This one, perhaps something closer to a person. The translator continued, "We are required to compete, but we choose how." Suddenly the quiet was broken. The envoy with jagged shoulders shrieked. A wall curled backward, revealing a pulsating sculpture, wet and enormous, part altar, part weapon. Her eyes blazed with color. The others rose to respond, not with speech, but through emitted patterns in sound, smell, and gravitational flicker. An argument had begun. Rian stumbled backward. Lights flashed across the ceiling. One envoy's feet melted into the floor, connecting her nervous system to the organic structure beneath them. Vines writhed toward another, who sliced through them with blades grown from her forearms. All the while, the air grew thick with incompatible chemical languages, overlapping and dissonant. The contest was escalating. One of the researchers monitoring the chamber from above activated the failsafe, and a pressurized mist descended, pacifying the atmosphere. It dulled the chemical broadcasts and drained color from the walls. The envoys froze mid-action, stunned into stillness. Ryan backed into a corner. "This is insane," he whispered. The translator buzzed. "Your relevance has unbalanced their unity. They do not understand refusal." Outside the dome, government observers debated whether to terminate the entire agreement. But deep within the structure, Ryan sat cross-legged again, eyes closed, trying to clear his mind. He had seen something behind the projections. Not desire, not affection, fear. A species, desperate not for conquest or love, but for survival through him. And still, he didn't know if he would help them. He left during a power reset. While the diplomatic biosphere went through its regulated dormancy cycle, part of an agreement to limit environmental stress on both humans and Drelvans, Ryan slipped out through an auxiliary corridor meant for waste drones. His absence wasn't noticed until morning. By then, he was already on a private suborbital vessel, headed for the Martian colony Red Harbor 9. The ship had no official flight plan. It was an old, jury-rigged transport once used to haul fungus bricks for hydroponics. Now it carried only him and an off-brand nav AI with a broken sense of humor. "You've got 7 entities tracking your biosignature," it chirped mid-flight. "Should I scramble your pheromone trail?" He rubbed his temples. "Do you even know what that means?" "Nope, but it sounds like something a fugitive might want." Red Harbor 9 sat half-submerged in Martian dust, its towers shaped like tree stumps and coated in solar-hungry skin. No one there cared who you were, so long as you brought your own oxygen and didn't reroute public thermal lines. Rian took a job servicing pressure regulators. Simple work. Honest. Involving no alien politics or inherited genetic legacies. Weeks passed. He grew a beard, grew used to the red twilight, learned the names of the bartenders, none of whom asked about the Earth incident. Sometimes in the far distance he'd see the sky shimmer, signs that a Drelvan envoy had reached orbit, but none landed near Red Harbor. Not until the twins came. They didn't look like the original envoys. These were subtler, smaller, clad in polymer cloaks stitched with breathing organisms. They entered the bar on a still evening and sat opposite Ryan without introduction. He stared at them, unamused. "You're late," he muttered. "I left breadcrumbs on purpose. Figured someone would track me in 4 days. It took nearly 3 weeks." The one on the left blinked slowly. Her voice wasn't translated. She spoke a human dialect, Australian accented English, parsed strangely. "We are not here to persuade, only to understand why you ran." "I didn't run," he said. "I walked away." "From immortality, genetic continuity, you do understand what you were offered?" Ryan drained his glass of rehydrated barley fluid. "I was offered a life I didn't choose, inside a plan I didn't build, surrounded by people who didn't care who I was unless it matched a strand in their library." The twin on the right leaned in. "You were not just a biological match. You were a narrative relic. You're mentioned in our ancestral dreaming." "That's not me," Ryan said. It's a projection. You're chasing echoes. She raised a hand. Even if it is myth, what if the myth is all we have? Later that night, Ryan stepped outside the dome. The Martian wind stirred his coat, low and whispering. He stared up, where the pale green flicker of Drelvan vessels drifted in the thin sky like fish beneath ice. The longer he stayed on Mars, the more offers he received. Not all from the original 9. New envoys, new tribes, some representing splinters of the Drelvan collective who had broken away entirely. Not all were trying to breed through him. Some simply wanted to preserve a fragment of his genetic structure in crystal, or feed a simulated version of his thoughts into a hive mind archive. Others just wanted to watch him dream. He refused every time. Eventually, he started leaving messages at each landing site, all saying the same thing. No means no. Stop making your extinction my problem. A few got angry. One released a virus into the colony's dreaming net, causing shared nightmares for a full Martian rotation. But the locals, loyal to Ryan for reasons they couldn't quite explain, retaliated by jamming Drelvan frequencies and installing scent neutralizers across the outpost. The aliens backed off. Mostly. One day, while adjusting a seal on a coolant pipe, Ryan found a folded note tucked into his gear bag, written in ink on old recycled paper. The handwriting was shaky, but human. It read, I've left them. I don't want to continue the contest. I want to speak just once, without expectation. If you're willing, come to Dome 12. M. He knew the name, not one of the 9. A junior envoy, quiet, never aggressive. She'd stayed in the background, always observing. Ryan remembered her not for pheromones or projections, but for the way she'd once returned a translator crystal to him without speaking. He considered tearing up the note. Instead, he pocketed it. The sky above trembled faintly. A new ship had arrived, but this one didn't scan the colony. It simply stayed there, silent, waiting. Ryan exhaled into the chill. Something was changing, and this time, no one was chasing him. Yet, the ship above Red Harbor 9 didn't transmit any demands. No envoys disembarked. It simply loomed, motionless, like a punctuation mark above the fractured relationship between one human man and a dying alien culture. Inside Dome 12, the lighting was dim. Filters hummed against the Martian dust. Ryan stepped through the threshold and found her sitting alone at a circular table carved from what looked like petrified fungus. She wasn't armored, nor scented with mood-altering emissions like the others. Her robe was thin, worn. She looked smaller than he remembered. Her voice, when she spoke, was unmodulated. You're angry. Ryan stayed near the door. Wouldn't you be? I would be tired, she said, and I think you are. He hesitated, then stepped inside. She introduced herself as Mesri, though the name didn't carry the weight of rank. She hadn't participated in the contests or the projection rituals. She had been a biolinguist, a quiet specialist stationed in one of the satellite orbs around Saturn, analyzing atmospheric shifts in insect-like communication patterns. I didn't come to Earth for the sequence, she said. I came because the others wouldn't stop. Ryan leaned on the table. Stop what? Obsessing over a man they don't know? No, she said, starving. She explained, carefully. Drelva wasn't dying because of environmental collapse or war. Their extinction was internal. A biological rhythm disrupted generations ago. Reproduction had slowed to near zero, but not because of infertility, because of memory saturation. Their genetic lines had become weighed down by recursive programming. Each generation carried more and more encoded memory from the last. It was once an honor to birth a child who remembered the lives of 1,000 others. Now those children couldn't think clearly. Their minds burned with inherited ghosts. They screamed from the womb. The solution? A reset. But their own species couldn't provide it. The right spiral, a reference to RNA patterning and inherited biofeedback, had been traced somehow to Ryan. Not because of who he was, but because his genome offered a clean anchor, a baseline from a planet never meant to carry their legacy. He listened in silence. Then he asked the question that had haunted him since the amphitheater. What if I just vanish again? Mesri lowered her eyes. They'll die eventually, but first, they'll fracture. Ryan narrowed his gaze. Haven't they already? She didn't argue. Instead, she placed something on the table, a transparent container. Inside, a soft globule pulsed gently. It looked like a fruit crossed with an eye. Tiny filaments extended from its surface, brushing the glass, retreating. Curious. This isn't an embryo, she said. It's a thought construct, a self-evolving model. It carries the idea of reproduction without genetic theft. You built this? She nodded. It doesn't need you, but it remembers your presence. That's enough. Far above the colony, the Drelvan ship that had remained silent suddenly fragmented. Panels peeled open like petals. But instead of releasing envoys, it broadcast a signal across multiple species bandwidths. A declaration, the core pact is void, the sequence is optional, voluntary conception has failed, the future must diverge. What followed wasn't war. It was cultural rupture. Multiple Drelvan vessels, those aligned with the matriarchal reproductive imperative, broke orbit and left the Sol system entirely. Others, allied with Mesri's splinter faction, remained in quiet orbit around Mars and the moons of Jupiter. Instead of collecting, they began seeding memory gardens, floating archives where no being could be born, but many could remember. Ryan sat alone in Dome 12 for hours after Mesri left, watching the pulsing thought globule slowly change color. From pale amber to violet, then to something indistinct. He wasn't sure if it was alive. He wasn't sure it mattered. For the first time, no envoy came to ask for his seed, his spiral, or his surrender. And still, something inside him stirred. Not attraction, not duty, possibility, just that. Quiet and alive. The thought construct matured in silence. It didn't cry. It didn't feed. It didn't radiate warmth or exhibit measurable sentience in the conventional sense. Yet Ryan visited it each day. The glass that held it was now gone, disintegrated as designed, leaving the strange being resting atop a low pedestal of reactive moss. It pulsed slowly, as if dreaming. The colony's instruments detected non-random electrical rhythms within it, but no one could interpret what those patterns meant. Only Mesri continued her quiet recordings, muttering to herself in Drelvan shorthand and earth science jargon, blending two languages neither of them truly owned. They didn't call it child, not aloud, not officially. But Ryan found himself thinking of it as something becoming, and he treated it like one might a fire. Too new to be left alone, too complex to control. Months passed. The galaxy didn't stop turning. Earth resumed its slow territorial disputes. The orbital cities kept selling synthetic food and overpriced oxygen, and most of the Drelvan diaspora scattered, no longer united under any single reproductive mandate. Those who had supported the contest faded from influence, their vessels returning to cold drift. Some vanished into pre-collapse stars on the fringe systems, their ends marked only by flashes caught in deep sensor sweeps. But others adapted. New enclaves emerged. Memory gardens expanded. Mesri's faction, no longer fringe, became a cultural cornerstone for what remained of her people. Less a species now, and more a philosophy carried by flesh. Ryan was invited to speak at a summit held on the moon of Iaso 9, but he declined. "I've said what I needed," he told Mesri. "Let what I didn't say speak louder." Instead, he stayed in Dome 12, with the being, with her. The construct had changed. It no longer resembled a fruit or an eye. Its form shifted daily. Sometimes it looked like coiled branches. Other times it was flat and disc-like, quivering with light. Then one morning, Ryan walked into the chamber and found it shaped into a small humanoid silhouette, curled into a fetal posture. It was neither male nor female. Its features were soft, ambiguous, Its skin wasn't Drelvan, not human either, but its breathing matched his. He sat beside it, unsure if it could hear. "I didn't expect this," he said. "I didn't want it. Any of it." The figure didn't speak. It tilted its head. No pupils, no mouth, just the faint suggestion of a face, lit from within. "But I'm glad you're here," Ryan said. Mesri entered quietly and stood at the edge of the chamber. She didn't interrupt. Her presence felt less like intrusion and more like acknowledgement, a witness to something neither of them fully understood. "What do we call them?" she asked softly. Ryan paused, then answered, "Sal." Mesri tilted her head. "Meaning?" "It's from a word my mother used, before language hardened into rules. She said it meant beginning without pressure." Mesri nodded. "We have no word for that." "You do now," he said. Months later, off-world dignitaries would request interviews. They would send envoys with questions. What is Sael? Is it a hybrid? A godchild? A symbol? None got close enough to find out. Sael would grow, but not quickly. They would laugh eventually. Not with two voices, like the old projections predicted, but with one clear, strange, untrained sound. A laugh not inherited, not translated, entirely their own. And when they finally spoke, the first word was not mother or father. It was Ryan's name, but spoken in a tone he had never heard before, like a song being invented from silence.